Joe Flacco off the board for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I know many people were not hoping that he ended up in Pittsburgh, but it is a name that is now removed from the list. He signs a one-year deal to return to the Cleveland Browns in the AFC North. The last time he was in Cleveland, he led them to the playoffs. He replaced Deshaun Watson beautifully, and I think it was the redemption shot that he was looking for, that the Cleveland Browns were looking for. I mean, you got to remember the last time Flacco was here might be the reason that Kevin Stefanski still has a job. And I'm not saying Kevin Stefanski is a bad coach. What I'm saying is that Deshaun Watson put them in a really, really bad situation. And things were getting brutal. And Kevin Stefanski, with a then, I believe, 36-year-old quarterback, something like that, decided, well, we're going to go to the playoffs and look damn good in the process. And he did. Now he's back. Joe Flacco returns to the Cleveland Browns on a one-year deal, competes with Kenny Pickett. I wouldn't put it past the Cleveland Browns to say Joe Flacco's our guy. There's nothing about Kenny Pickett where we currently stand that in my eyes says he is a long-time starting quarterback in the NFL. And I don't think he was ever that guy. I think he had an opportunity in Pittsburgh. Once he was traded, I think the first-round label that you have to kind of lean into is gone. So he's in Cleveland as a guy that is a young option, but I don't think their best option. And Joe Flacco might be. To get surpassed by Joe Flacco, not the worst thing in the world at 37, 38 years old, however old he is. Nah, not the best thing in the world for Kenny Pickett, but it's a name off the board for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, two sides of this. I'm not worried about Joe Flacco. I don't think Joe Flacco turns the Cleveland Browns into a Super Bowl contender. I don't think he turns them into an AFC North contender. I don't think Joe Flacco is the reason that all of a sudden Myles Garrett and everybody else are thrilled and happy. I still think the door is open for a quarterback in the NFL draft, even Shedeur Sanders, who we'll talk about in a little while. But I do think it's a guy who last time he was here looked pretty impressive, and you do have to acknowledge that. For the Steelers, that is a big one off the board. I don't know how much interest they had in Joe Flacco, but I do know Joe Flacco was on some sort of list. Just like Carson Wentz is on some sort of list, just like Russell Wilson was on some sort of list, just like Justin Fields was on some sort of list, just like Daniel Jones was on some sort of list. It's another name that's gone as the Pittsburgh Steelers wait for Aaron Rodgers. And the more and the longer this lingers, the more you got to look at it and say, where are they going? How long are they waiting? Because Omar Khan made it very clear. And again, Joe Flacco is not the guy that moves the needle for anybody. But Joe Flacco is a name on a list that is shrinking quickly. And the Pittsburgh Steelers have made it known that if it's not Rodgers, they want another veteran. They want another guy in that room to add to Mason Rudolph and Skylar Thompson, and most likely a rookie. Joe Flacco seemed like an easy answer. He seemed like, okay, worst case scenario, you add Flacco. He's a quality backup, maybe worst case a third. And you feel pretty confident about a guy that if he has to step in for a game, can do something. If he needs to compete with Mason Rudolph, it's not great, but it's not, you're not going out there and getting Tyler Heineke and saying this guy's going to be our starting quarterback, or Desmond Ridder, and this guy's going to be our starting quarterback. Now we're hitting the point where those names are becoming more apparent. I get it. Tyler Heineke's in LA, but Desmond Ridder, all these other names that are floating around that nobody really wants, and maybe Desmond Ridder's on a roster somewhere, but I'm just using it as an example. We're hitting the point in the list, in the options, where every day that passes, every name that comes off, the Pittsburgh Steelers options are getting much smaller. Not smaller, much smaller. It's a significantly shorter list than it once was. Aaron Rodgers has shown no indication of turning things around. He's shown nothing that he's going to sign with the Pittsburgh Steelers. They've taken their actions elsewhere, but at some point they are going to want a veteran. And I think every quarterback that comes off the board, the Pittsburgh Steelers look at and say, this is a guy that we needed to consider that is no longer available, which means that we are walking the line even closer to not having any reliable options left by the time Aaron Rodgers tells us, screw off, I'm going to Minnesota, which is a real possibility. We can't sit here and say, I spoke to somebody 2 days ago about the situation, and there was no update outside of the fact that the Pittsburgh Steelers think he's going to sign, but they have no idea. Nobody has any idea. And if Aaron Rodgers isn't going to sign, names like Joe Flacco, who's next? Carson Wentz? Because the second Carson Wentz goes off the board, there's nobody left. There's nobody left who has the starting experience that you're looking for to say, we got to just throw darts against the wall and hope something works. Hope something sticks. That's what the Steelers are going to do. And I get it. Mason Rudolph's a decent backup plan. He's not the worst thing in the world. And that is the direction that they're going to go. But they made it abundantly clear that they are going to add another veteran. And the less options that you have, the more you're forced into doing something or considering something drastic, like going after Kirk Cousins, which I don't think is a good move for the Steelers. I think it's better than some moves, but I don't think it's a good move for the Steelers. And chances are you're going to have to give up something for a guy that you're taking a risk on instead of just signing somebody to a low-end one-year deal. That is where they're walking the line closer to. That is what this move says. It's not good. It is not good. Each name that comes off the board, I think the Pittsburgh Steelers get closer and closer to an absolutely terrible situation instead of just a bad situation. And Aaron Rodgers just keeps stringing them along, showing no indication that he's going to go one way or another. And I'm going to be honest, at some point we got to draw a line, and the Pittsburgh Steelers got to say, hey, look it, this is it. We can't wait anymore. We need an answer from you. You're not that guy, pal. You're not the dude that we could wait 7 months for, 6 months for, and say, okay, great. We're about to end week 5 of this. This is 5 weeks of Aaron Rodgers not giving an answer. Wild times. And with Joe Flacco off the board, you got to think that we're getting closer to the Pittsburgh Steelers drawing that line or waiting too long to the point where they're going to have to do something drastic if Aaron Rodgers says no, which is a possibility. And that drastic might be Kirk Cousins. That drastic might be a first-round quarterback that doesn't have a first-round evaluation on it. It might screw up the whole thing. It's getting bad. And again, the Steelers are confident he's going to sign, but nothing's certain. And the second that Minnesota says, JJ suffered a setback, JJ isn't here, JJ isn't that guy, the second that they wait to OTAs and say, all right, let's just do it, screw it, let's bring Aaron in. The second that he chooses to retire, it's all downhill. It gets way worse for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's where they're walking. Not good. Joe Flacco news, another negative for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I get it. Joe Flacco wasn't going to win a Super Bowl for the city of Pittsburgh. He just wasn't. But he's an option that pushes them closer to fewer options and maybe more drastic options, and neither of them are good news for the Pittsburgh Steelers.